Chairman Peterson, Vice Chairman Serino, Ranking Member Craig, and members of the committee. As the Ohio State Director for Convention of States, I'm pleased to be here today representing more than 100,000 folks in Ohio who have signed the petition. Those petitions went to you, and your office gets them every day, every week. We're requesting you pass Senate Joint Resolution 4. And by way of background for myself, I'm a retired financial executive, having been a partner with an international accounting firm doing corporate and forensic auditing, consulting for bankrupt companies and litigation matters. I've also been a chief financial officer for several insurance companies. With my background in financial, it should come as no surprise that of the three amendment areas that talked about today, the plank calling for fiscal restraints on the federal government is the one that concerns me the most. In my business life, I saw firsthand how good-intentioned companies fail to survive due to a lack of fiscal discipline. They push their creditors and their lenders for more lines of credit and more debt, and their businesses just didn't warrant it. However, there's well-established process failing or failed companies in the bankruptcy court. Patients either rehabilitated, and creditors take haircuts, business gets new financial controls and management, or the patient is declared dead and gets buried. And the lenders, of course, and the other folks lose everything. None of those things or limitations or rules apply to our federal government because they can simply print more digital money and saddle our kids, our grandkids, and future generations with debts that can't be repaid. With the ability to use a digital printing press, there's no date certain that the U.S. would be forced by creditors to make hard choices or maybe face liquidation. Why can the feds do this? Why? Well, because historically, the U.S. has been the bedrock of world stability and strength, which allowed our debts to be backed by nothing more than the full faith and credit of the United States. That means you, me, our kids, and future generations are the ones that are expected to be productive enough to pay our debts with perpetually strong and growing economy. That historical position of strength also allows us to be the world's reserve prime currency. If we lose that status, the ability to print the digital money could be severely curtailed or stopped. And I submit to you that we could become Venezuela overnight. I'm not a bomb thrower. I'm not saying that for effect. I really believe that things go gradually until they don't, and there could be a cliff, and our financial house is not in order. So I say that in all seriousness. The current national debt you often hear about is now 30 trillion and growing. But as an accountant, I can tell you an additional real unrecorded number that's more than 5 times that, a staggering 150 trillion when you add something called unfunded liabilities. These are future obligations mainly consisting of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid for benefits already earned or promised to citizens but are not yet payable. This is known as accrual accounting under general, which most large businesses follow and need. But our federal government accounts for its revenues and expenses mostly on a cash basis, just like a small family business might, or the corner dry cleaner. Our federal government uses the same accounting. They do not include these enormously large unfunded liabilities in our official national debt. In the last 65 years, our federal budget has been balanced only a few times, and not in the last decade. Instead, our go-along to get-along leaders in Washington fool themselves and us with something called continuing resolutions that allow Congress to simply keep spending at the same levels as in the prior year, thus kicking the debt can down the road and not balancing a budget. These fiscal problems cannot be solved by electing more responsible or good people. Because if you put these good people in a broken system, they will and have continue to fail and not be responsible. This is a structural problem of the federal government, structural. It's not personnel mostly, it's mostly structural. So with this structural problem, our government has just gotten too big and too unaccountable. And that's why I strongly support some series of common sense amendments to the U.S. Constitution that would restore fiscal responsibility and allow federalism to once again be the way we govern ourselves by returning power to you, the states. And as you all know, the states must balance their budget, right? So in closing, I'd like to ask you to consider two things, if you would, please. You're going to hear testimony in your next series, your next round, with the opponents of COS. And I'd like you to consider two things. One, do these opponents have unstated reasons for wanting the status quo, such as protecting pet projects or programs that depend on grants or other types of federal handouts? Is their organization fundraising by keeping their members continually fearful of so-called risky Article 5 changes in the Constitution? Secondly, do these opponents offer any solutions to the problems of a runaway federal government? And if so, are those solutions actually in the Constitution? Like Article 5 is actually in the Constitution? Or are they merely coming up with ideas that are cobbled together and selectively interpreted from other documents and writings of a few founders found outside of the Constitution? You should come to realize that the opponents of a convention of states do not offer constitutional solutions, but mainly something called FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I ask you not to fall for FUD. It's an emotional marketing strategy that businesses have used rather successfully since the 1960s to sell against their competitors. In these difficult times, we need constitutional actions with the courage of conviction, not fear. So please pass SJR 4 onto the full Senate for a vote, and let's make Ohio number 20, and I ask for your vote.
I'm here live in Philadelphia at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. When you hear the phrase lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, these are the folks we should think of, those who anonymously gave their lives. Well, today you have a chance to volunteer. You need to volunteer for conventionofstates.com, the movement that's going to save the country. These folks are willing to step up and give everything. We need you to give just a little bit. Go to conventionofstates.com and volunteer today.